After my previous video on sourdough scheduling, lots of you asked how you can fit sourdough baking into a proper full-on day. So today I thought I'd run you through my schedule of how I bake bread when I'm out at work for 12 hours. So no YouTube kind of kitchen setup for this video. This is how I bake bread at home. Now, if you want to experiment with this and fermentation times or kitchen temperatures are a bit of an issue, then later in the video I'll have a few tricks that should help you out. Now, during lockdown I had lots of time to spare for my baking, but since things have got back to some kind of normality, I need to be a bit more realistic about my time. So this is how I bake sourdough when I'm a busy boy. It's 8 PM on Sunday night and my kitchen temperature is about 16 degrees Celsius. Now I need 98 grams of starter for my sourdough loaf, so I'm going to feed what's left of my starter in its jar with about 55 grams of water and 55 grams of flour. After a quick stir, I cover it loosely and leave it out at room temperature to ferment overnight. So if you're wondering why I didn't weigh the starter that was in the jar before adding the water and the flour, then you should check out my sourdough feeding video. I'll link it in the card above and in the video description. It's 7:30 the next morning and I'm on the clock to get out of the apartment, so I don't have any time to play around with my sourdough today. In goes 256 grams of water. Now the temperature dropped a lot last night and my starter hasn't quite peaked yet, but I've got no time to waste, so into the bowl goes 98 grams of my starter. Now, some may say that I should wait until my starter has peaked properly before I use it, and certainly in an ideal world that's exactly what I'll do. But when I'm up against the clock, if I can see that fermentation's going really well, then I'm going to use it. I'm not going to cancel my baking or change my schedule to fit the sourdough. The sourdough needs to fit in with my life. So after a quick stir, I add in 9 grams of sea salt followed by another quick stir. Straight in with 387 grams of strong bread flour, and after another quick stir with a spoon, I use a wet hand to bring the dough together for 1 or 2 minutes. Now I'm not looking for a smooth dough, but I do want to make sure there's no dry spots and everything is really well mixed, and then on goes the cover. So this is going to sit out covered at room temperature until I get home tonight. Now that's going to be around 8 o'clock, so about 12.5 hours in total. Now I'm home just before 8 o'clock and this definitely could have proved for a little bit longer to be at its optimum, but I'm going out again in half an hour, which means I need to shape it now. So when I'm tight on time, I don't really worry about a pre-shape. I flip the dough out, pull it out into a rough ball, lightly dust the top with a touch of rice flour. I flip it over and I roll it up into a cylinder while tucking in the sides, just to kind of keep it neatish. I make sure the seam is pushed down and then give the dough a quick bath in rice flour and then straight into the basket with the seam facing upwards. Now this is going to sit out uncovered at room temperature until I get home, which is going to be around 10 o'clock tonight. It's 10:30 and the dough is nicely into its final fermentation. I'm going to tuck this up for the night uncovered in the fridge. Now there's no doubt that this could have proved a little bit longer at room temperature before I put it in the fridge. But again, this is about making things fit in with my routine and not the other way around. And from this moment on, I've got a big window as to when I can bake this dough. If I'm at work again all day tomorrow, then I could bake it tomorrow night when I get home. But if tomorrow's Saturday and I'm off, then I could get up and I could bake the loaf in the morning and have a fresh loaf ready to go for breakfast. So it's 4 o'clock the next day and it's my window to bake. But as I said, if you're at work all day, don't stress. This is going to sit quite happily in the fridge until you get home. Now I've preheated my oven to 220 degrees Celsius on bake mode with no fan. That's 430 degrees Fahrenheit. I take the dough straight from the fridge, it's still cold. I give it a quick score after turning it out of the basket and then slide it straight onto that baking stone. I'm going to cover it with a pot. That's going to bake for the first 20 minutes covered. I'm going to uncover it and then finish the bake for the final 30 minutes. Now baking like this isn't down to luck. It takes a little bit of practice. You need to understand how long your fermentation periods take and what's happening with the temperature in your kitchen, not my kitchen, in your kitchen. There's no magic formula with this, so you need to experiment a little. And remember, if you're going to try this hands-off approach, then make sure you're using a good quality bread flour with a protein content of 12% and above. Now there's one trick I like a lot if I want to kind of manage the temperature for my fermentations. When my kitchen gets a bit warmer, I like to use a big chili bin with 1 or 2 ice blocks, and that way I can maintain a pretty cool temperature. And that's all dependent on the ambient temperature, the temperature of the dough that goes inside the chili bin and the amount of ice blocks I use. But with a bit of playing around, you can maintain a really cool temperature, which is fantastic for extending those fermentation times. Now, when the summer gets really hot here in Greece, I pop my starter in the fridge just before it peaks, and then when it's time to make my main dough, I use cold water from the fridge and the starter from the fridge. That drops the temperature of the dough, again extending the fermentation period. So there's lots of tricks you can use to cool that dough down, which will extend the fermentation period and help it fit in with your schedule. Now, adjusting the amount of starter you use in your main dough will also help you manipulate fermentation times. Now, with the help of a viewer, Ovi, we've put together a basic sourdough recipe calculator. For those of you who have subscribed, you're going to receive that on Monday, which I think is the 31st of January. If you're not subscribed or you want to check out the calculator, there'll be a link in the video description. But using any sourdough recipe calculator is going to help you adjust the amount of starter while maintaining your target hydration. Now, for a hands-off loaf, I am really pleased with this. It's got a decent crust, it smells amazing. There are no issues with dough strength, even though I didn't incorporate any stretch and folds or laminations. But this is only going to work if we use a good strong bread flour and a sensible hydration. I'm quite happy with the crumb, and overall, for a damn fast, no-nonsense loaf of sourdough, I am a happy chappy. Now, if you're into sourdough scheduling and seeing how it can fit into your life, then I've got another video on just that, and you can watch it by clicking here. And remember, sourdough doesn't always need to be complicated. A huge thank you for watching. I'll see you again very soon. Stay tuned.